Hello everyone. I am going live today with my homegirl Heather. So join in everyone. I'm going to be going live and bringing on a guest with me. And she's more than a guest. She is a soul sister. And we are collaborating on a project that I'm so excited to share with you guys. And what better way to do it than to jump on a live and tell you a little bit about us. I haven't done one of these lives in a while, so let's just hope I know how to do this. Here we go. Hello, darling.
Hi, beautiful. How are you?
I am good. Let me adjust this. All right. Yay!
Yay. I'm so happy to see you.
How are you doing today?
You know what? I'm doing great. I'm here with you, so that's amazing. I see Sarah's is here too, so that's awesome. Yeah, blessed new moon in Pisces, girl.
What does that mean? What does that mean for
Well,
us?
there are layers to this. Get ready. There are
Hmm.
layers to this. So every time we have a new moon, that's a great time. Like the energy really supports us in planting seeds for what we want to bring into manifestation, right? The experiences we want to have, the things we want to create, how we want to feel. So, we get a new moon every lunar cycle, so every 28 days or so. But because it's in the astrological sign of Pisces, which is just a psycho-spiritual spectrum of energy representing mutable water, and water is our emotions and our feelings and our sentiments. So it's changeable water, right? It's changeable emotions. It's adaptable. So Pisces is very psychic and very dreamy. So all of the water signs are very intuitive, right? So this really lends, itself to our conversation tonight. But of course, we'll be talking about the collective energies. But yeah, it's very imaginative. It's artistic. It's creative. It's really beautiful. It's like about loving everything and being connected to everything and like deep compassion. Pisces feels everything. But the thing is, the lower expression of that is victimhood, right? And
Hmm.
feeling like I can't lead. And then also having poor energetic boundaries. So you merge into everything, right? Like water that seeps into everything it touches. So you have to learn how to have good energetic boundaries, right? To really be
Yeah.
in the empowered expression of that energy. So yeah, I mean that's like the gist of it. So I would say um what's coming through is just like dancing and like being in the energy of like how you want to feel, right? Really getting it in your body, right? And using music or art or whatever. Just dreaming, not 3D stuff. Like going spiritual, doing something you've never done before, imagining, envisioning this,
Hmm.
especially this new moon. So yeah,
Hmm.
that's what I'm in right now.
Um, that is such a beautiful introduction segue into our conversation today because Heather and I are coming together to share a very special weekend virtual retreat with all of you. Um, and before we tell you what exactly that virtual retreat is about, it certainly touches on this season of um, embracing your intuitive nature, your psychic nature, because everyone is psychic. And what we'd like to do is really share our story and how we found our way to this work. So, Heather, I will share mine because I share my story all the time. So why don't we start with yours?
Oh my God.
How
Wow. I mean,
long ago was it?
when I,
When did you realize that I always get this question, which is why I'm like, let's start with you. But when did you realize that you had intuitive abilities?
I think, as you said, everyone is psychic, everyone is sensitive to energy. It's just like how open, right, are you to it? And some people are more naturally like gifted in those areas than others, but I do think everyone is psychic. So I've had these abilities all my life, but I didn't realize it, like that I could trust myself, right, and my senses above everyone else's until I was like in my mid 30s, where I had this, basically this embodied sense that this relationship that I was in, which I was not happy in, honestly, but I was so disconnected from myself and concerned about what other people thought and checking off
Hmm.
boxes, right? I mean, I learned so much from that, but I just had this like impending sense of doom, and like I hadn't talked to this person in a few weeks. It was just time had gone by. Like obviously it was not going well, but everyone around me was like, "Girl, you're tripping. He's not going to break up with you." And I'm like, I just got a huge download like that the day that it happened. It like dropped into my head like this is the day it's going to happen. And that's exactly what happened. And I was just so mad at myself, but because I didn't listen to myself, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it was just like brought to that moment, and then realizing, and then my first thought was like, oh, this relationship, even though I wasn't happy really in it, this relationship is ending. What are my parents going to think? Right? That I'm, 30 whatever years old, and I'm still, I'm not in a solid relationship. It's like I realized how much pressure I was putting on myself, and it was all like
Yeah.
external shit, and I knew that it wasn't the right thing for me, but I wasn't listening to myself. And then when I knew it was actually going to happen, when I got that download, and everyone was like, no way, you're just crazy. There's no way that's going to happen. Like, that's exactly what happened. So that was a big turning point for me. I would say that was like a big spiritual awakening for me. That was probably the beginning of it. And then it, you know, started unfolding pretty rapidly since then. So I guess it's like coming up on, I don't know, maybe like 7 years of this, of
Hmm.
knowing that I could trust my intuition, my senses, and it's just kind of like expanded and in crazy, amazing, wonderful directions since then. But it's been a lot of shedding. It's been a lot of shedding, of expectations, which are like colonial impositions, right? Of like things happening on a timeline, and if they're not happening at these specific times, I'm a failure, right? And like beating myself up. Like I had to let go a lot of shit,
Hmm.
to really be myself finally, which is somebody who is very intuitive, very sensitive to individual energy, collective energy, very sensitive to the energy in my environment. I have to recharge myself, after being around a lot of people. Um, it's been a journey, really, like, and connecting with my ancestors has been a huge part of that journey. And doing the embodiment work has been a huge part of my journey. And then discovering or really diving deep into astrology, that has been so empowering as well in terms of understanding my energy and how my ancestral wounds, and what my unique energetic signature is, which really supports you in being empowered, I think, as an intuitive empath, for sure, as an
Hmm.
intuitive. Girl, I'm
So,
just I'm just talking.
no,
I'm realizing.
it's great because I have so many questions now that I'm sure other people are gonna want to know too, which are so relatable to like what we're talking about here. And if anyone who's watching the live, thanks for being here. Anyone who watches the replay, thanks for being here. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments and we will catch them for you and ask each other. But what was sort of like what did you start to do to build a conscious relationship with your intuition?
Well, I think starting at that initial spiritual awakening, that's when I really committed to my meditation practice and just trying to be still and quiet my mind. Um, because I
What
was
was that
just,
like in the beginning?
it felt, well, because my dad, God bless him, treated me to a transcendental meditation course right around the same time. I can't remember if it was like before or after or during, but it was around that time that had learned that technique, right? Which was really helpful for me because I needed a mantra to like ground me because my mind was all over the place. So that just having that little bit of structure really helped me to, and then doing it 20 minutes in the morning and 20 minutes in the evening, just short amounts of time, but it was really doable. And so I did that, for a long stretch. And then I also did a lot of mantra work, right? Just more positive affirmations, and really tried to get my mind right because our minds are so plastic, right? Like
Hmm.
we can change what's going on in there. We can rewire ourselves. We can repattern ourselves. So, I did a lot of like mental repatterning, but also quiet. I mean, and I think the quiet time is also mental repatterning as well, right? For me to just sit and trust. So to sit in trust, that was a really good muscle to flex. Because there would be
Yeah.
times like after that happened that I would experience so much like love and healing in my body that I would be brought to tears. Like I just would have like embodied experiences sometimes when I'd be meditating where I would just be like, tears would be flooding down my face, like, because it was so beautiful what I was experiencing. Like, that's how it
Hmm.
felt. So, yeah, I was like, oh, this feels amazing. I'll have more of that. So I just kept, I kept doing it.
That's a good motivator.
Yeah, I mean, that was like the beginning of like the embodied experience of like love in my body. It was like the first like real glimmer. I was like, what is this? What is this like sensation? And in a way, and the only way for me to access it at that level of consciousness was like, okay, what if I shined the love that I shine on other people? What if I shined it on myself? Girl,
Yeah.
girl, and it was like, ah, like waterfall, like, oh my God, that felt amazing. Why don't I do that more?
Yeah. I
So
find,
it blew my mind.
yeah. So I'm really glad you brought that up because what I find with a lot of empaths is that um, we're so conditioned to just accept a norm of helping everyone before yourselves. Like this behavior of martyrdom, this theme of like everyone comes first and me last, and that's very noble. But it's like when you challenge someone to be like, well, what if you came first? What would it look like if you took care of yourself so that you could take care of other people? And it's just a mind for a lot of people because they're like, I didn't even think that that was possible.
Right. I know.
Yeah.
Girl.
Yeah.
I mean, thank you. Thank you for holding the space, for us to have this conversation. I mean, it's like, and I'm healing, like, this is part of my healing process, this work and being with you. Like, it feels so good to be here
Yeah.
and to articulate all of these things because there's so much coming through right now. It's like, I'm trying to catch all of this stuff, right? It's a lot of this stuff is like happening in the moment. It's crazy, but I'm excited.
So, okay, I want to talk about that for a second because a lot of times what I find, for those of you that are joining and aren't familiar with my work, I teach psychic development and I do readings. And I find whenever I work with empaths, actually, scratch that. Whenever I work with someone that is completely new to developing a conscious relationship with their psychic abilities, um, the when I share with someone that you get to set the terms of engagement of how you experience the energy, that is always a
Right.
because I remember what it was like when I first started like really getting the energy rolling, and it would come through so quickly and I would feel so out of breath after reading because it came through so quickly. And what I've come to realize is that when you say slow it down, you're not going to miss anything. It
Right.
actually, what happens is like it becomes like thick honey, and you get to fully immerse yourself in it, and you get
Mm.
to right, and it just increases the intensity of what gets soaked in, what's integrated. It lets you go deeper in what you're receiving. And so I'm always telling people like be very specific about how you want to experience it. Do you want it to be slow? Do you want it to be intense? Do you want it to be gentle? And if you find that you don't like it that way, you can always go back to the way that it was before. But you need to feel empowered enough to to call it out, to declare it and command it.
I love this. This is going to be my new moon intention. This is going to be one of them, right? To like
Yeah,
call
yeah,
in the quality, right, of the energy, of how I experience the energy, right? How do I
yes.
want it to feel in my body? Oh, girl.
Yes, yes. But for
Well,
reals, because
yeah.
like when I first started doing readings, I haven't been doing them like that long, to be perfectly truthful. But I used to get it very clearly in my head where it just felt like it was my own thought, which is claircognizance. I don't like to talk about the clairsenses too much because I feel like people get too caught up in like which clairsense is coming through, and it's like it doesn't matter.
Right.
Um, But before that, I used to get messages as symbols and images, um, more so. And I felt like it was such a beautiful and poetic way to receive messages,
Hmm.
but it also takes more energy because you have to interpret them.
Right.
Um, but that's what I wanted. So I actually took the harder route because I was like, I love these beautiful poetic images. And so even though I got it the easy way, I was like, no, I want to go back the other way. And then I'm kind of in a stage where I'm like, I want to go back to having it the easy way. So it's like you can go back and forth, like whatever flavor you like, go for it.
I love that. You're just
Yes.
you're just dropping so many nuggets for people. Right. This
Hmm.
is amazing. Oh,
Um, So why don't you share what it is that you do? Like what is your soul's calling? And then I'll share kind of my story and how I got into this, and then we could share what it is that we are birthing to the collective.
okay. I love it. All right. Well, I'm Heather, and let's see. I'm an ancestral healing guide, life path astrology reader, a mentor to evolutionary sacred space holders. And so, what I'm doing in this life, what that looks like, is I'm walking the path of healing my ancestral lines on both sides of my multiracial family. So, my maternal ancestors are from the Visayas in the Philippines. My mom's family is from Tacloban, which is where Crisel's family is from, right? So that's amazing. So we have common ancestors and we've been put together, so that's like totally obvious. Um, and then on my paternal side, I have ancestors from all over West Africa and then Northern Europe. So um, I've got, like the transatlantic slave trade on that side, right, as something that is in the DNA, right, that is being processed. And then also I've got colonization like on my maternal side. So been working through a lot of those, dissolving those frequencies over the past few years. And so that's, what I guide people through, right, as a companion, right, as a sister, to hold the space for you to do this ancestral healing work. And by the way, the gifts of ancestral healing work, holding the space for unresolved grief, this whatever, shame, guilt, like all of these dense frequencies, when you can hold the space for those things, oh my God, you alchemize this energy that is caught up and stagnant into intuitive gifts, into spiritual gifts, into multi-dimensional gifts. So I'm living proof of that. And so, if I can make it easier for somebody who wants to do this, I mean, I'm walking the path of becoming a responsible steward of my ancestral wisdom and indigenous spiritual tradition. So I'm learning still, like, all the time. There's so much, and it's unlearning and remembering, which is, a lot of the journey. So, I've worked with primarily, over the past few years, I would say the vast majority of the folks that, are that I come into contact with, they're like women of color, and they're decolonizing as a spiritual path. So I use, all different types of modalities, including, forms of divination, and I do life path astrology readings, which I love because it's a wonderful tool, right? It provides a great framework and language for understanding yourself as an energetic being, right? And human design helps you understand the mechanics of your energy, and they work so well together. So yeah, I mean, depending on what's coming up for somebody, to that, and also what's in the collective, and that's part of what we do, is we organize and sort, like, what is yours to carry and what is not, and what are you dealing with right now that is actually a microcosm of the macrocosm, that is something in the collective, and it's bigger than all of us. So I think that orientation, there's education that people need. So yeah, I just have a journey that I take people on, that I just, my goal is to hold the container that is safe, that is compassionate, that is non-judgmental, and that is loving, for them to process whatever needs to come up, right? And have that support. So that's my work, and I'm happier than I've ever been in my life. I'm happier now than I never thought I could be this happy right now.
That's beautiful.
Because I've done a lot of work to set boundaries, energetic boundaries, psychic boundaries, right? Not only 3D boundaries, but like, no, I'm closing the door to this energy, right? Because we're so conditioned to believe that that's being rude.
Right.
You're
Let's talk
not
about
being
that.
nice.
Let's talk about that a little more once I get a chance to share my story, because I think that's a conversation that we can take really far. But my name is Chriselle, for anyone that doesn't know me on this live or that's watching the replay, and I'm a multidimensional medium. I am a QHH2 practitioner, and I teach psychic development. And what really brought me to this work, like, I did not know that I had psychic abilities or that I was intuitive. It was probably 4 years ago that I was in a space where I was really depressed, and I wanted to learn self-care. So I knew from a friend that took a psychic development program that psychic development is grounding, meditating, and raising your vibration. And so after trying some meditation apps and not feeling like I was getting anywhere, I took a 1-day workshop. And I took that 1-day psychic development workshop with the sole purpose of like learning how to meditate, because the apps weren't working for me. And the most powerful thing that I learned in that class was that I'm an empath. And I was like, I feel like so much of my life now makes so much sense from what that I learned in that class. And the meditation that she taught us, like, I'm sure a lot of people have heard this, where you like form a bubble around you, but you bring the bubble in really close, so that it's basically like bringing your energetic field inwards, so you're not touching everyone else's field. Made such a big difference in how I felt. And I continue to do it like almost like multiple times a day. And my energy just like improved so much, because I used to commute from downtown LA to San Gabriel Valley in the suburbs, and I would always get home feeling nauseous, just wanting to be in a dark room by myself and not engage with anyone for the rest of the day, and just feeling so sick all the time. Um, and I realized that it was because I was empathic. And at the same time, I knew that I was allergic to all kinds of food, and I didn't know what foods, and I didn't know what was happening with my body, because it was like from one week to the next, I was eating the exact same foods, and all of a sudden my body was breaking out in hives, rashes.
Yes.
My throat was getting tight. My eyes were getting swollen. Like, I didn't know what to eliminate. I ended up eliminating everything, but I didn't know even where to start, because I was like, I just ate this last week. I just ate this last week. I ate everything the week before. So that's what brought me to psychic development. Like, I took a class for self-care, and then I was like, oh, this is really fascinating, all of this other stuff. And I just kept going with it. And it was never my intention to even create a business out of it or to make a profession out of it. But it was just so fascinating, and I just kind of like found myself there. So that's how I found my way to it. And to start developing that conscious relationship, I started to realize, like, oh, I've been doing this all my life. I just didn't know that's what it was. Because I know from watching TV, I thought that psychics were fortune tellers. I thought that you see disembodied ghosts, like figures in front of you, and that's how you see spirits. But it wasn't until like the last year maybe the last 2 years, that I actually started seeing things with my physical eyes. And the rest of the time, it was always just happening in my imagination. And so that's kind of what brings us today to like what this conversation is about, is helping people understand like what it means to be an intuitive empath, and how we are offering a weekend retreat to give people the tools to feel empowered in their empathic nature.
I'm so excited. Yay.
And a big part of that is boundaries, because as an empath, you're basically like this multi-armed octopus that's reaching into everyone's energy. And as an empath that is not conscious of it, and I had someone in one of my classes recently, and I told them, I was like, you're very empathic. And she's like, I don't want to call myself that because everyone calls themselves that. And I was like, that's because everyone is. I was like,
yeah, accept it, roll with it.
I know, but like, and I get that sentiment, because
Yeah.
there are people that talk about being empathic as if it's an exclusive club, like it's some sort of badge of honor to have. And sometimes people are very proud of how weak their boundaries are and how sensitive they are. And I'm like, bro, it just means you don't have a grip on it. I'm sorry, but that's how I view it, is like, if you feel like you're too victimized or like you're too helpless in situations as an empath, it's because you don't have a grip on it. It's because you don't have the tools to be able to show up fully in your energy. And that's a big part of this weekend retreat that we are offering, is to give you the tools so that you can show up and take up all of your energetic real estate that is your birthright. Very simply put.
Tell it.
So let's talk about boundaries, because we hear a lot in the mental health space about boundaries and how important they are for you. And I think what people miss is, and this is something that I posted about on my Instagram feed recently, where people think of mind, body, spirit as three separate channels to be treated as separate. But really, the whole idea between mind, body, spirit is the intersection of all these things. Right. So when you create boundaries in your mind space, and when you create boundaries in your physical space, it doesn't matter, or even in your energetic or spiritual space, it doesn't matter which one you choose, it reverberates and creates a new pattern throughout all three, because they're all related. And when people think about like setting boundaries as like saying no, as what are some examples that you can think of that you have done?
Um, I mean, honestly, ending my last relationship, that was a huge boundary that I set. Like, I am no longer available to be in a relationship that drains my energy,
Mm-hmm,
you know?
mm-hmm.
Or, right? Like,
Relationships. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, that was huge. That was like, that was a major, like, ancestral healing because that, is a pattern. That for sure is a collective pattern there. But, right, like, I deserve to be happy, right? And feel like I'm in my own energy, that I feel calm in my nervous system, right? When I'm at home and when I'm with my partner. So that's
Mm-hmm.
some real talk right there.
Yes, it is. Yeah. Big time. Yeah.
Right?
Because I'm thinking about all the different relationships that we have, whether they're intimate partners, whether they are friendships, and whether they're family, and the drain and the effect that it has on our energy that we may not be aware of. And one of the things that I've been thinking about, that I'm thinking about as we speak about this, is that when I was feeling very sick, when I went through my conscious spiritual awakening, um, I was working in a very toxic work environment. Everyone hated working there. I loved the people that were my peers, and we bonded. But truthfully, we bonded on about how much we hated the place. And so that's really toxic. So even though you're like, I like my job, I like the people I work with, it's like, okay, but let's dig deeper. Like, what is it that you like about the people that you work with? What is it that you like about that job? And like creating a boundary with like how you will show up in those spaces is part of saying no, and is a part of cutting off your availability to that kind of energy. And that has effect on your energy, your spiritual energy, your physical energy, your mental energy. Like it's all just feeding into the toxicity, right? Of how you're feeling.
My goodness. I'm glad that you're out of that situation.
Yeah. Yeah.
My
It was
goodness.
awful. It was awful. Like, it sucks. I actually went on a podcast called I Work with a Nightmare to talk about that work experience. So if you guys really want to hear more about it, you can go to my website and it's in my blog. Because I'm not available for it anymore. Like I'll think about it, but I'm not going to get back into it because I don't need to relive it. I don't need to rehash it, you know? Um, which I feel like is such a big part of our growth and evolution. A lot of times people feel like they can't let go, like they're hooked onto it, like reliving that, as if they'll lose their identity if they forget all the crappy stuff that they went through in that experience. And it's like, no, you can actually lovingly depart with it and move on and still like have so much respect and gratitude for the experience without having to relive it over and over again.
Yeah, we have control over that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
yes, we can get addicted, right? We can get in toxic loops for sure, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it's interesting how like it sounds like you have been pushed to like the point you've had to been pushed to the point of like extreme discomfort for you to like wake up and like remove yourself, right? Like I had to go through like to the point where I was questioning my own sanity. Like, I've had to go I've gone to some scary, places, and have felt a wide spectrum of emotions. I feel like part of being in a body, right? Why we're here in 3D in the bodies is to have these, to feel emotions, right? And I
Right.
think
Mm-hmm.
part of what has opened, that has helped to support the opening of my intuitive channels, my psychic channels, is really expanding the spectrum of what I allow myself to experience in my body, right? Whether it's like grief, sadness, right? Like because I have felt like extreme grief and sadness, it's opened me up, it's expanded my range. So now I'm like more open for joy and pleasure and ecstasy and all of those beautiful things. I don't know why I
Oh,
got.
100%. I feel like when you allow yourself to really feel those emotions and make it to the other side of it, because a lot of times people, they'll start to feel the intensity of whatever the emotion is, and they'll be like, "Ugh, this feels like too much," and
Or
they'll
I'm
like
gonna die.
not just cut themselves. Yeah, or they'll just, and so they'll numb themselves to the rest of it,
Yeah.
which really is like energetically when people numb themselves to something or they like try to switch, like change things up. It's like they're taking that emotion and putting it in their pocket to be finished later. And your pocket is finite space. So at some point, when not everything fits in that pocket, then everything just spills out. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So yeah, we can get emotionally constipated, and I think part of what we're helping people to understand, that emotions are just energy in motion, right? And
Mm-hmm.
they come in waves and they come and go, and you can breathe through them.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing is permanent, and
Mm-hmm.
we're so resilient. And I do think that's part of why we're here, is to have those experiences, those embodied experiences, and survive them. And well, I do think that's part of the ancestral healing work we're doing, I think,
Oh,
in this
totally.
life. But girl, we could just keep talking about this forever.
I mean, yeah, because I came from a background that, like, I didn't grow up religious. I didn't grow up spiritual. And even as I attended this one day psychic development workshop, as I was the only person in that class that did not have a supernatural or paranormal experience that led me there. I was just like, I'm here for self-care. So to switch gears and then suddenly, honor the energy that exists within everything, the consciousness that exists within everything, and especially honoring the consciousness and energy that exists within me is such a departure, right? And I think there's so many people in this world that are coming from that same background because there are so many, like, hello, the general population considers psychic abilities as a pseudoscience, where they're like, we know stuff happens, but we can't explain it, so it's hard to validate it. And it's like, do you need confirmation and validation about everything? Like sometimes you just gotta give it up to God.
That's right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's what we're going through this as a collective, right? We're moving beyond what we can see, feel, taste, hear, smell, right? In the 3D, excuse me, and connecting with what is beyond the veil, right? Like we're opening, I think, as a collective. I think humanity, right, is remembering, like beginning to remember our divinity, and there and being intuitive is just about being able to receive information in nonlinear ways, right? Which is what the 3D is. Everything's linear. There's a hierarchy, there's a structure, there's an order, right? And it's all imposed. That's not real, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I think that's a larger thing that's happening. And part of why we're here is to help with this transition, right? And we're doing
Mm-hmm.
it, we're healing our lineages by embracing this, by embodying this energy of being like fully expressed, right, as intuitives, right, in a world that isn't like so friendly to it. I think there's still people who are really scared and um, in disbelief around it, and that's fine. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. It feels great in my body, and I'm excited to be, co-creating with you and connecting with other folks who really want to feel empowered around their intuitive abilities, right? Feel grounded, and feel excited and happy. I mean, that's what I'm all about. I'm not too worried about, I feel like the folks who get it, they'll come.
Yeah. I want to take a moment to kind of talk about the kinds of things that, um, in hindsight, you realize you were really intuitive. I like to talk about these things because, like, as a person that didn't realize until I had my conscious awakening that I had these gifts, I like to hear what other people identified in hindsight of their conscious awakening too. So as you said that you always had these gifts, what were some examples of how you were receiving messages from spirit or nudges from spirit before you had your conscious awakening?
Oh, girl, I think that I was very imaginative as a child, and I could go into different worlds in my own head, right, and dissociate from where I was, right? Like I'd be looking, I could be looking at something with my eyes open, right? Like I'm here, but I was not there. I was in
Mm-hmm.
a dimension of my own creation, my own storyline, my own like soap opera, whatever was occupying my mind, right? As like an 11-year-old. But yeah, I mean, looking back, I was doing, I was not in the 3D. I was going other places, creating my own uh, stories. And yeah, it just feels like I've been doing multidimensional work for forever. I was having recurring dreams. Oh my God, this was a huge realization. So ever since I was a kid, I had this like recurring nightmare of like being in like an abandoned parking garage with like endless escalators and concrete and metal, right? And it was always just like so cold and terrifying, and like there was no human beings around, there was no nature. And that's so I finally, this is like a few years ago that I made this connection, but like I was already having these nightmares of like being disconnected from the earth, right? And being
Mm-hmm.
disconnected from my heart and people. Like that, my nightmare was just like all of this cold, yeah, just like all these structures, like no life, like basically lifeless. So that was a trip, thinking back to like how many times I've had that nightmare. I mean, I haven't had that nightmare in a while. It's been many years, but that was definitely a recurring one. So
When's
that's
the
the
when's the last time you
consistency.
had that nightmare?
It's been years. It's been,
Pre-pandemic for sure.
oh, yeah. I mean, I think it's been like at least 5 years, maybe more, maybe 10, but I don't know. I don't remember. But it's definitely like throughout my childhood and like as a teenager and in my 20s, I had that. That was something that would come up, you know.
So for people that are watching, I think it's important to share that when you dream and when you visualize and you kind of go into this like imaginative space, that is your psychic nature at work. And that what you're doing is you're really working with your third eye. And the third eye, it does have to do with like your perception and what you're creating into your reality. And so that's kind of what Heather is talking about. And I share that because I also was a very imaginative kid. I used to have really vivid dreams, and I didn't realize that was a thing. Like I didn't realize that was a psychic thing. Um, so when I realized, I was like, oh, huh, maybe I have been doing this psychic thing for a while. And that's how I do my readings too. It's like, in the beginning, I used to close my eyes and I would just see all kinds of things happen in my imagination, and that was all for my interpretation.
The other thing that I will say is that I've always been very sensitive, and um, people would always tell me their problems. Like there's something about I knew I could tune into people and right, like take people's temperature and then communicate to them on the vibe that they were at, right? So it was a lot of like attuning to other people, right? That I
Mm-hmm.
was because I had a Filipino family at home, also the black side of my family, and then I was in a white school, so that's a lot of you know shifting and changing, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
I would say across the board, people always felt comfortable like confiding in me. They felt safe in my energy.
Yeah, that's totally an intuitive empath trait because your energy. Okay, so what I've realized is that when you're an empath, you're feeling a lot of what other people are feeling, and so they feel really comfortable with you because it's like they can see themselves in
Right.
you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So if you ever had random people like come up to you and just spill their guts, that's an empath thing. Like, not that they're an empath necessarily, but that you are an empath, and it's because you are reflecting back to them parts of themselves. And they're like, oh, I feel comfortable because you feel so familiar. And it's like, oh, it's because I feel myself.
Right. That's a
Yeah.
trip.
How often does that happen to you?
Oh, often.
Yeah.
Often. But I would say that like I have better energetic boundaries around that, you know, like because I
Hmm.
try to ask, if I'm going through something, can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. If I am going through something and require support and need somebody to hold space for me, I, I'm disciplining myself to articulate that, to ask for what I need, right? And ask for consent, right? Like, do you have the space? Do you have the time to hold space for me? Because sometimes it's not the right time, or like you
Hmm.
can't, like you're at capacity energetically, and you honestly, or you just
Hmm.
say, you know what, I have 10 minutes, go, right?
Hmm.
That's
Hmm.
it, so that I think that's a huge thing. But what was your original question? I'm sorry. Remind me.
Oh, how often that stuff happens to you? How often random people start telling you their deep dark secrets?
Yeah, it's often. It's pretty often, you know.
Yeah.
But it's cool. It's cool in a way, it's like, whoa. I just learned a lot about that person.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
interesting. I mean, it's all an adventure. I feel like spirit, well, first of all, I feel like every person that comes into your orbit anyway, that is spirit communicating with you on some level, right? So I,
Yeah.
I try to look at it from that perspective, and it's like, wow, look at why did the universe bring me this person? Like, I just try to be curious and
Yeah.
excited about it as opposed to like, oh my God, I need to protect my energy, blah, blah, blah. And sometimes I'm like that. It depends on where I'm going. But I would say I'm also choosier about where I go
Oh,
because I
totally.
embrace my identity and like my truth, and I embody this truth that I'm an intuitive empath and I'm sensitive to energy. So I have curated the people that I spend time with. I only go to places where I feel like I'm safe, or I feel like it's going to be a good vibe that's not going to drain me. So that requires me like saying no to things,
Yeah.
or can we do this instead?
I used to feel so rude to tell people like, oh, I don't really have time to listen to your long-winded random story. Like I got things to do. And I would just you know, stand there forever and ever and ever and just let people pour their heart out to me while meanwhile I'm like, I've got to pick up my kids, I've got doctor's appointments to go to, like I've got work to do, like I can't stand here. And what I find a lot amongst people that are empathic and don't realize it is they don't realize how much they're draining from themselves by being in those situations and not exercising their sovereignty or freedom of choice to be like, I can do this now. Like, if I have the time now, that's fine. But also feeling like, or recognizing that they are also a priority and feeling the freedom to say, I don't have time for this right now. I got shit to do. And then not feeling responsible to the other person to just walk away and take care of themselves.
I know. We have a thing with like overgiving.
Oh, totally. Yeah. So a lot of times with empaths, there's also a lot of burnout and exhaustion because the heart chakra has a lot to do with, the heart chakra is the two sides of giving. It's giving and receiving. And oftentimes empaths are always giving, giving, giving. And because they don't see themselves as a priority or they've never considered that they could be a priority, there is no receiving or there's very little receiving. And to all the women out there, like that is our freaking conditioned story of put everyone before you, take care of everyone, and I'll take what's left.
Girl.
Mm-hmm.
We're shedding all of this.
Mm-hmm. Oh, for sure. Yeah.
This is really powerful.
Mm-hmm. And it's not to say that men and that men don't go through it too, but as women, we have so much more historically that we've taken on from the collective in that sense of putting ourselves last and taking on all the work. Like I just started watching this TV show called Dollface. It's hilarious and I love it because at the core of the storyline, it's about women taking care of each other and having a strong network and relationship with other women. So, the episode that I just watched, it was a woman that took on more responsibility at work and she didn't feel comfortable setting boundaries with her boss and letting her boss know that it was more than she expected, that it was a very heavy workload and that she was getting cracked. It's a funny show, so it was done in jest and in humor. But I was like, damn, that's like, I don't know how many times I've been in that position where I'm like, no, if I tell them that it's too much for me or that I need help, it'll be seen as weakness and then they'll think less of me. Like, I don't know how many times in my career as a parent, as a friend, as a human being, that I've been in that situation myself.
Yeah. Ooh, I'm gonna have to check this out.
I love it. And there's so many brown women on the show and Asian too, like Brenda Song and Shay Mitchell are in it. So I really like the show. I love the cast and it's, yeah.
Is Shay Mitchell Filipina?
Yeah, she is.
Yeah. I knew it. Kappa connection.
Yeah.
It's fire. I love it. That's so awesome. I'm gonna check that out. But that's speaking to, what's happening in the collective for sure. Oh my gosh. Well, what else do you think people need to know before we have to get off here?
So if any of this is resonating with you, then our virtual retreat is something you want to be a part of because you will have a hands-on practice in tending to your energy in managing and mastering your personal energy so that you can feel confident and empowered in taking up your energetic space and to use your energy. And we're creating an application, and I'm going to add the link to my profile. So if it's something that you're interested in, you can complete the application. And then Heather, will you have it in your links on your profile?
Yes, I will.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So excited.
How about you, Heather? Anything you want to add?
Yeah, I'm so excited. There's so many things to get into, but I'm excited for sharing, you know, this particular container with you. I think it's going to be really fun. I think it's going to be really empowering, and I think it's going to be, yeah, just paradigm shifting and very healing. And I think it's what we need right now. We need more of us empowered, more of us, grounded and taking up space, as you said. So great.
One thing that I want to add, because yes, we're going to have hands-on practice. We're going to share a ton of information to help you master your own energy, but you're going to get so many immediately implementable practices to master your energy. And these are practices that I've shared with other students. And something a student told me once was they felt like they had so much energy afterwards, and they're like, I felt like I needed to work out. I think that she did actually have to work out in order to be tired enough to go to bed. But you're going to feel a noticeable difference in your energy at the end of this retreat. And I'm so excited to share it because empowering people in their psychic abilities is kind of my jam.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
So I think we're going to do another one of these
We're going to do this next week.
Yes. So drop us a heart emoji in the comments if you watched all the way through, and then fill out that application if you want to be a part of our virtual retreat. Bye.
Bye. Own your throne, everybody. Own your throne.
Yeah.
All right. Love you. See you, sis.
Love you.
Thank you.
I'm like, how do I end this?